Ladies and gentlemen, the sole genius behind the Ares system, my son Brent. The applause was deafening. I stood frozen as my father Edward handed the microphone to my brother, a gambling addict who couldn't code a single line. Edward leaned in close to me, his smile never wavering, and delivered the blow that erased 10 years of my life. "Don't make a scene, Mia," he whispered, his voice cold as ice. "You're just the mechanic. Mechanics don't get equity. Now smile or you won't even get a severance package." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my security badge and set it gently on the mahogany table. It made a soft click that nobody heard over the cheering. Then I turned around and walked out. I walked past the investors, past the champagne, and past the $1.2 billion worth of technology that, unbeknownst to them, was about to become very, very expensive paperweights. Before I tell you what happens when a mechanic decides to stop fixing the engine, drop a comment. Where are you watching from, and have you ever had someone take credit for your life's work? I sat in my 10-year-old sedan, the engine cold, listening to the muffled bass of the celebration music thumping through the garage concrete. My name is Mia. I am 32 years old, and for the last decade I have been a ghost. Inside that building they were toasting to the future of Ares MedTech. They were celebrating the Class 3 robotic prosthetics that could let a paralyzed man run a marathon. But they didn't know how those machines actually worked. They didn't know that every single line of code, every safety protocol, and every FDA compliance log bore my digital fingerprint. My brother Brent? The architect? Brent couldn't even spell compliance. He was a gambling addict who treated the company accounts like his personal casino. I spent my 20s cleaning up his messes. I worked 18-hour days fixing his errors, covering his tracks, and ensuring that our technology didn't accidentally kill someone. I signed every safety log because Brent didn't have the license. I was the safety net that caught him every time he fell. You might ask why I stayed. Why did I let them use me for 10 years? It's a question I asked myself every time I drove home alone while they went on vacations I paid for. The truth isn't simple. It's what psychologists call the trap of normalized cruelty. My father Edward didn't break me in a day. He chipped away at me slowly, methodically since I was a child. He taught me that love was conditional. He taught me that my value wasn't inherent. It was functional. I was valuable only when I was useful. I remember when I was 12 I won the state science fair. I ran home, bursting with pride, holding the blue ribbon. Edward didn't even look at it. He just pointed to Brent, who was crying over a broken toy car. "Fix it, Mia," he had said. "Your brother is the statue, you are the pedestal. Without you he falls, so don't you dare move." That was the lesson. I wasn't the art, I was the support structure. I wasn't the star, I was the gravity that kept their world from spinning apart. They trained me to be invisible. They trained me to believe that being the good daughter meant setting myself on fire to keep them warm. They thought that training would last forever. They thought I would fade away quietly because that's what pedestals do. They stay still while the statue gets the glory. But they forgot one thing. If you remove the pedestal, the statue doesn't just look less impressive. It crashes to the ground and shatters into a million pieces. I looked at my hands. These were the hands that wrote the code. These were the hands that secured the safety of thousands of patients. And these were the hands that held the only key to the kingdom. My phone buzzed in my lap. The screen lit up with a notification I had received every single day for 3,600 days. It was time. The vibration against my thigh was a feeling I knew better than my own heartbeat. 5 p.m. The daily automated prompt from the Ares central server. I pulled the phone out. The screen glowed with a simple white notification box. Biometric handshake required. Level 5 administrator. Authorized daily operations. For 10 years I had pressed the green accept button without thinking. I pressed it on Christmas morning while my family opened gifts without me. I pressed it during my best friend's wedding reception while hiding in the bathroom. I pressed it while I had the flu, while I was on dates, and while I was burying my grandmother. That button was the leash that kept the billion-dollar dog walking in a straight line. Edward thought he had stripped me of my power when he took my plastic security badge. He thought firing me meant I was gone. He forgot that he hadn't just built a company. He had built a kingdom of Class 3 medical devices that required a licensed monarch to function. And he had just exiled the queen. I propped my tablet on the steering wheel. The company was live-streaming the event for the global markets. On the screen, Edward was laughing, clinking his glass against the lead investor's flute. Behind him, the Ares Mark IV prototype arm was performing a delicate piano sonata, its titanium fingers moving with fluid grace. It was a masterpiece of engineering. My masterpiece. "Zero equity," I whispered. I looked down at my phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. The green button meant safety. It meant keeping the peace. It meant swallowing the insult, going home and hoping they might throw me a few crumbs of gratitude later. The red button meant war. I didn't hesitate. I didn't shake. I pressed decline. On my phone, a new message flashed. Authorization denied. Initiating emergency protocol. I looked back at the tablet. On the live stream, the piano music stopped instantly. The Ares arm didn't just slow down. It froze mid-strike, its fingers rigid, locked in a protective rigor mortis. The sudden silence in the boardroom was louder than the applause had been. Edward frowned, tapping his glass again, thinking it was a pause in the program. He turned to the prototype and waved his hand, expecting the motion sensors to pick him up. The arm stayed dead. Then came the sound. A low, rhythmic pulse began to blare from the display console. It was the FDA-mandated alarm for an unsupervised device. Beep, beep, beep. The investors stopped drinking. They exchanged confused glances. Brent rushed over to the console, his face pale. I watched him furiously tapping the screen, trying to bypass the lock. He looked like a child trying to fly a spaceship by banging on the dashboard. A large red banner scrolled across the presentation screen behind them, replacing the Ares logo. It was crisp, clear, and impossible to ignore. System lockdown. Unauthorized operation. Licensed supervisor missing. All units disabled. Edward's smile vanished. He spun around, his eyes scanning the room, scanning the crowd, looking for the one person he had just thrown out like trash. I took a sip of the lukewarm water bottle in my cup holder. The show was just beginning. The silence in my car was shattered by the ringtone I had assigned to my father. A jarring, repetitive siren. The name Edward flashed on the dashboard screen like a threat. I picked up. I didn't say hello. I didn't have to. Turn it back on. His voice was so loud it distorted the speaker. I could hear the chaos in the background. Investors shouting, chairs scraping, the relentless beep of the FDA alarm. Turn it back on right now, Mia. I know you did this. I know you rigged it. I leaned back in my seat, watching the live stream on my tablet. On screen, Brent was sweating through his expensive suit, frantically mashing buttons on a console that was completely dead. I didn't rig anything, Edward, I said, my voice calm, almost bored. I told you, I'm just the mechanic. And since I don't work there anymore, I can't authorize the safety protocols. Don't give me that technical garbage, he screamed. You sabotaged the fleet. You planted a virus. I will sue you for everything you have. I will bury you so deep you'll never work in this industry again. It's not a virus, I corrected him. It's a feature. Specifically, it's the 24-hour supervisor mandate required for Class 3 medical devices. Without a licensed administrator to biometrically sign the logs, the system defaults to safe mode to prevent patient injury. It's not sabotage, Dad. It's the law. I don't care about the law, he roared. I have investors here. I have $1 billion deal on the table. Fix it. There was a scuffling sound, and then my mother's voice came on the line. She was crying, that breathless, high-pitched sob she used whenever she wanted to manipulate me. Mia, please, Cynthia begged. How could you do this? How could you be so cruel to your brother? This was his big night. He needs this win. Why are you trying to destroy this family? I closed my eyes for a second. There was the classic pivot. When threats didn't work, they switched to guilt. They didn't care that Edward had just fired me and erased my existence. They only cared that I was ruining the party. I didn't destroy the family, Mom, I said. You did. When you sat there and watched Dad give my life's work to a gambling addict. You chose your side. We gave you a job, she shrieked, the mask slipping. We fed you. We let you play scientist in that lab. And this is how you repay us. By embarrassing us. Give me the phone. Edward snatched it back. His breathing was ragged. Listen to me, you ungrateful little brat. I want the override code. Right now. Give me the password and maybe, I won't call the police. I looked at my hand again. The thumb that had pressed decline. There is no password, Edward, I said. It's a biometric key. It scans the unique vascular pattern of a licensed engineer's thumbprint. Specifically my thumbprint. Then come back here, he demanded. Get in here and unlock it. I can't do that, I said. Why the hell not? Because you fired me, I said. And as you so clearly pointed out, mechanics don't get equity. So unless you're planning to sign over 50% of the company in the next 5 minutes, my thumb stays with me. You can't do this, he stammered, the reality finally hitting him. You can't just walk away with the keys to $1 billion company. I just did, I said. Good luck with the investors, Dad. I hear they hate surprises. I tapped the red end call icon on the screen. The connection severed. The sirens stopped. On the tablet, I watched as the lead investor stood up, buttoned his jacket and walked out of the room. Edward chased after him, grabbing his arm, desperate, pathetic. I put the car in gear. I wasn't going home. I was going back. Not to fix it but to finish it. I walked back into the lobby of Ares MedTech. The security guard, old Mr. Henderson, couldn't look me in the eye. He just buzzed me through the turnstile with a shaking hand. I took the elevator up to the penthouse floor. I expected lawyers. I expected a settlement offer. I expected Edward to slide a piece of paper across the table with a number that had too many zeros, trying to buy back his dignity. I was naive. I forgot that when you corner a narcissist, they don't negotiate. They annihilate. The boardroom doors were open. The atmosphere inside was heavy, suffocating. The investors were still there, sitting in tense silence. Brent was leaning against the wall, scrolling on his phone, looking bored. Edward stood at the head of the table. He wasn't sweating anymore. He wasn't screaming. He was adjusting his cufflinks, looking calm. Too calm. "I'm here," I said, stepping into the room. "Let's talk about the equity I was denied." Edward looked up. He didn't smile. He looked at me with a performance of such profound sadness that for a second, I almost believed it myself. "I'm sorry, Mia," he said softly. "I really didn't want it to end like this." "End like what?" "Like this." He nodded toward the side door. It burst open. 4 men in windbreakers stormed in. They didn't look like corporate lawyers. They moved with the aggressive precision of law enforcement. On the back of their jackets in bold yellow letters, FBI. My blood ran cold. "Mia Vance," the lead agent barked, crossing the room in 3 strides. "Hands where I can see them." "What is this?" I asked, backing up. "I didn't do anything. We have a sworn affidavit from the CEO of Ares MedTech alleging corporate espionage, wire fraud and the deployment of malicious ransomware," the agent said. He grabbed my wrist, spinning me around. I looked at Edward. He was shaking his head, playing the role of the devastated father to perfection. He held up a thick manila folder. "She rigged the system," Edward told the agents, his voice trembling with fake emotion. "We have the logs. She planted a virus to hold the company hostage. She demanded 50% of the shares to unlock it. It's extortion." The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around my wrists. The sound echoed in the silent room. I stood there, physically restrained, while the people I had served for a decade watched. The lead investor looked at me with pure disgust. To them, I wasn't the architect anymore. I was just a bitter, unstable ex-employee trying to burn down the building. "I didn't plant a virus," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. "It's a safety protocol. Check the code." "Save it for the judge," the agent said, tightening the cuffs. Brent pushed off the wall. He walked over to me, grinning. He leaned in close, so close I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. "I told you, sis," he whispered. "Dad's always one step ahead. You think you can steal my company? Enjoy prison." My mother, Cynthia, was sitting in the corner. She wasn't crying anymore. She was looking at the floor, refusing to witness the monster they had created. "Edward," I said, looking directly at my father. "You know this is a lie. You know I didn't rig it." "We tried to help you, Mia," Edward said loudly, performing for the agents. "We gave you a job. We gave you a purpose. And you betrayed us." The agent shoved me forward. "Let's go." As they marched me toward the door, my mind was racing. They had planned this. They knew they couldn't beat me technically, so they decided to bury me legally. They framed me. They turned my own safety measures into a weapon. I looked at the prototypes, still frozen, still flashing red. Edward thought arresting me solved his problem. He thought if I was in a cell he could force me to give up the keys. He didn't realize that by putting me in handcuffs he hadn't just framed me. He had just walked directly into a federal trap he didn't even know existed. The agent read me my rights, but I kept my eyes on the flashing message behind Edward. "System lockdown. FD Protocol 21-11. Edward was glowing with victory. He had taken my work, erased me from the company, and now planned to jail me to finish the job. But he forgot the lead investor. "Wait," the investor said, pointing at the screen. "That error code isn't a virus. It's federal compliance." I told the agent to search 21 CFR Part 11. When he checked, the truth unfolded fast. Removing me, the only licensed regulatory supervisor, shut the facility down by law and exposed the company for operating illegally. A felony. I told him to review the logs. They weren't hacks, they were my safety audits. And behind them was the real scandal. Brent overriding limits and falsifying data to boost the stock price. That was why they fired me. The investor saw the evidence and exploded. $1 billion investment had been built on fraud. Moments later, the handcuffs came off my wrists and snapped onto Edward's and Brent's. 3 months later, Ares MedTech was gone, seized, liquidated, and bankrupt. Brent pled out and went to prison. My mother abandoned ship and begged for money. I ignored her. I returned only to buy equipment for my new firm. Edward was there, out on bail, screaming at movers stripping his office. And it finally hit me, his power had never been real. It was just money and volume. Without cash he was no one. He tried to command me one last time. I walked away. Outside, sunlight hit my face as I unlocked the servers for my new business. My name. My license. My future. Sometimes the only way forward is to let the wrong system collapse and build your own.